Let's pot about it.
Pod about it.
Rob and Steve, podding.
Podding and robbing and stealing.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it doesn't rhyme, but it was fun to say.
Yeah,
How you doing?
not bad, buddy. It's kind of the first week of like 70 degrees plus outside with sun. So actually able to like work out outside and get a little bit of a sweat on, which is nice.
Yeah,
I
we,
know
we
you
had a
get that
little bit
all.
of that this weekend down here. I think it got up to like 72 or something, but today it's 68 and cloudy.
Ooh wee.
June gloom. A little early.
Yeah. Yeah, today here it is 79 degrees right now, and it says it's sunny, but I just know it's going to rain later. Right, there's a little gray cloud way out there in the west, and I can feel it in my bones.
Feel it aching in your hip.
Yeah,
I swear I used
definitely.
to be able to feel it in my knees because I mean I don't have anything like severely structurally wrong with them. I had a partially torn meniscus in high school, and then I got some inflammation here and there. But like I could tell when the air pressure changed, my knee felt different. Like
Yeah, yeah. It's why it's old. It's some old man shit, huh?
for
But you
real.
really can feel it in those
Yeah.
injuries.
Ooh,
Some
that just reframe on you.
Yeah, you did a little remix there. It looked like a P Diddy video from the '90s. That
Whoa,
was pretty
easy,
sweet.
easy, easy.
Oh, I mean music video, not a P Diddy video. My bad.
All right, let me. Okay. Well, I'm gonna jump into the next topic, and while we're discussing your thoughts, I'm gonna try and reframe the correct portrait landscape. So on social media this week, I think it was right after we stopped filming our last pod, I saw something that came out that was they called it man or bear, and so you're in the woods by yourself. Would you rather see a man or bear? And so they were specifically pointing this question towards women. Um, and it was interesting to kind of hear their perspective on it. And like the more I thought about it, the more my answer actually changed. So you're you're in the woods. Let's say it's Elena. She's in the woods by herself. Would you rather her see a man or a bear?
Hmm. Probably a man because statistically speaking, uh, what is it? Like 99.999% of males are not criminals or have a history of assault against people. So just if it's just a man, now if I'm supposed to infer that this man has ill intentions, then my answer is probably bear because there are methods, to scare them off that everybody knows. But you can't just put your arms up and yell at a guy and him not just laugh at you if he's ill intentioned. So, yeah, I mean, if it's just like a random picked out of the hat, like, you know, the magic claw goes around the world and picks a man at random, and that's the guy who's out there, I'd say man. But if it's an ill intentioned guy for sure, I'd say bear.
All right. So, and everybody I saw on social media, especially the women, every single one of them was picking bear. They would rather see a bear than a man. And so my first reaction was like yours, like, okay, like if it's a man, there's a chance that man could be there to help you. And all that stuff. And it's like this whatever percentage of men that will have ill intentions are so much lower than, a bear gets frightened by you and attacks you.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's people out there that are throwing out all these statistics, like 25% of bear encounters end up in attacks. And of those attacks, like 10% end up in fatal injuries. And so if you do see a bear, it's a very small percentage that you're going to die. And then I thought about it as, okay, the percentage of, they did the same thing you did in your head about what percentage of the male population is violent or sexual offenders. And it's extremely small. But then take into account like all the stuff that isn't reported and all these people that if they had the opportunity to do it not get caught, what would this go into? But the reason I turned around and said I would rather see a bear is because we are an apex predator. If it's a man and a bear, like a well-equipped man or a bear in the woods, that man is going to win 99% of the time.
Hmm.
And so if a man, we can be diabolical creatures. In fact, you could argue that we are, and we're destroying the planet. But a man can do so much worse than what a bear could do. Like if you think about what's the worst situation that if you ran into a bear, the bear kills you. The worst situation if you ran into a psychologically ill human person is so much worse. That person could capture you, torture you, eat you limb by limb for the next 20 years of your life, turn you into their sex slave, whatever it is they could do. It could be so much worse than what a bear could do. And the worst thing that could happen is with a bear is you get killed.
Yeah.
And I would argue I'd rather get killed than captured and tortured for 10 years.
Yeah, that's true. That like getting a quick death is probably less strenuous than,
Even if it wasn't a quick death, even if it took me a week to die. Like
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the other part of that is the psychological damage that comes from, you see a man in the woods, you're attacked and you get away. Now, every time that you see a man anywhere, you're going to get triggered a little bit. You don't see bears everywhere. So you just move away from somewhere with forest and you don't have to be reminded of that. But, if you get triggered by seeing a man, it could have some really long lasting effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh.
So that's when I first saw it. I had the same reaction you did. It was like, oh my gosh, okay, man, there's a good chance that man is going to be there to help you. And then it was like, okay, what percentage of bear encounters turn into bear attacks? I've had a bear encounter. I didn't get attacked.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. Okay. I guess we're telling the story now. I didn't even think about it till right now.
Yeah.
So I worked at a summer camp, and we would get
On an
nights off.
island, right?
It wasn't an island. It was in the hills in California, like probably 3 hours north of LA. Maybe not even that far, 2.5 or something. Up by Castaic Lake, if you're looking at a map. And so we would get nights off because, it's just exhausting being around 10-year-olds, a group of 10-year-olds all the time. So we would have 2 counselors to a room. One night I'd get a few hours off where I can go have dinner by myself and hang out with people my age instead of telling fart jokes to 10-year-olds. And so we're hanging out and we're getting ready to go back to the cabin. It's late. It's dark. So it was me and one or two other counselors. We're walking back from the main hall to where our cabins are. And then so we're walking back and a car drives by towards the back of where like the lunch area and stuff and the dumpsters are. And all of a sudden they drive by. 5 seconds later, I just start feeling the floor shake. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Ba-bum, ba-bum. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And I turn around and look, it's like, oh, it's a bear. And oh my God, it's a bear. I literally had that reaction. And we all ran inside like the rec room that was right next to us. And that bear must have been 10 feet away from me. And like after I my heart calmed down, came down from being 200 beats per minute to 100. It's like, oh my God, what just happened? Wait, that wasn't a very big bear. It was only 400 pounds,
Yeah. Only twice my size.
Yeah. And so
5 times my size.
And the car that drove by came around and found us and said, hey guys, sorry about that. The bear was getting the dumpster. So I shined my lights on it and it ran away. And it was a baby bear. And so there's a big mama bear that I guess is around there. And he got spooked by the car and ran away. But like I said, I felt the floor move. It was an enormous being.
Yeah.
Then we started, sharing stories about the stuff. And the guys who have been there for, 5-10 years, we're talking about the mama bear and how the mama bear is, 2-3 times as big as these baby cubs. And mama bear is not afraid of cars.
Wow.
Mama bear is bigger than cars. And so they've said that they've drove up and seen the mama bear in the dumpster and they honk at the mama bear. And she's like, what do you want? Go away. It was like,
wow.
A car does not scare her. So yeah, I've had a bear encounter and came out completely unscathed.
Wow. Dude, that's nuts. Yeah. I think a baby bear would be, I'd preferably see a baby bear, but I wouldn't want to hang around too long for mama to come up.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've heard about, if you touch one of their cubs or get too close to them, they just straight up attack.
Yeah.
Anyway,
oh yeah.
Man or bear?
I think if I was in the woods alone, I think I'd rather see a man because at least I could fight. I'd have a chance if it came down to a fight.
You'd have a chance, yeah, but let's I don't know. I still think I'd go bear just because the opportunity for it to be something terribly life changing is so much worse with the man.
Yeah, true. I give you that. Well, interesting. So that's trending on Instagram right now, huh?
Yeah, it was last week. I don't know how much longer it's going to last. When it was,
Yeah.
and then there's people talking about how it's just all, the political stuff. It's just all men are the worst, and everyone should hate them, and
Uh, yeah, that's pretty funny. Oh man, we could go down a rabbit hole on that.
yeah.
But
So that's
if,
our
if,
trending topic of the week.
yeah, if people want to hear that, they can go listen to the podcast of what's his name, Andrew Tate. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, yeah, he's probably on the opposite side of that. He'd probably have a good competing argument for most of TikTok.
Yeah, that dude's nutty.
All right. Well, let's talk about some real estate stuff next, because we had an interesting conversation this week, and it was about subject to financing, which we've talked about before. But the fact that you've actually put one together and structured it and got it done gives you a huge leg up on how this all kind of goes down. And so, just to kind of give some background on this stuff, I found a property near me that was in a very desirable location that had been on the market for a year, and then a year is an extremely long time around here, regardless of what price or condition, whatever. Houses get snatched up in 1 or 2 months, pretty much anywhere in Orange County. And so I found it, and it was been on the market for a year, which usually means it's overpriced or there's something drastically wrong with the property. But then I saw that it was offering subject to seller financing, which means that there's something going on with it, and the seller is willing to help you get financing because you can't get it through normal means. Led me to believe that, again, it's likely overpriced. But I kind of reach out to you because you've dealt with these kind of transactions before, and I wanted to hear from you, how you kind of structure these, find these. Is this how you find them? You find properties that have been on the market for a really long time, and you find out, what's the seller's real need, and then go from there? Or so how do you find them, and then how do you structure them once you found them?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a million ways to find them. This is kind of more in like the wholesaler market, right? So wholesalers, if for folks who don't know what that is, basically they find a house that's, not listed on the market, or maybe it even is, but usually it's not. And they get it in contract for a certain price. And then before even closing on it, they sell it to someone else, an investor typically, who pays a little bit more than what the wholesaler got the house in contract for. So there's kind of two contracts. There's a contract, a purchase contract from the seller. There's an end buyer contract with the wholesaler. And then whatever the difference is of those two purchase price amounts is the wholesaler's, it's called a assignment fee. So the way that works is you basically assign a contract to an end buyer for a certain price, and the end buyer doesn't even necessarily know what your contract with the seller directly is. So that's just sort of setting a foundation there. But how you find them, there's a million ways to do it. You can, a lot of people do door knocking. That is the classic way, especially before the internet, and like cell phones and all these apps you can use online that like dialers that dial numbers for you. You can door knock, or you can buy data online from a website like PropStream, or even using some CRM softwares like Mojo or REI Sift is another one. But there are a few of them that you can buy the software. It's monthly, $100 a month or something, and then you can set parameters like I want to look for houses in Newport Beach and in these area codes, and you want to say, okay, I want houses that have they've had the same owner for 10 years, and it filters the list for you, and you print that list, or you don't print it, you print it to PDF essentially, and then you say, okay, REI Sift, or okay, Mojo, I want you to you skip trace the numbers for this filtered list. And what that means is it scours the internet and public records and everything that's, most public records are online now, sometimes behind paywalls and stuff, but these softwares all have those paywalls taken care of for you. And they can pull all kinds of public information in terms of phone numbers and maybe if the owner lives at a different address or stuff like that. So now you've got a filtered list that has phone numbers all put onto each address.
So what are you filtering these lists by?
Any number of things. So you can filter it by length of ownership. You can filter it by equity in the property, estimated equity in the property. You can filter it by pre-foreclosures, if they're behind.
If you're trying to do like some unique financing or something like that, aren't you looking for properties that have, upside down equity or unique financing on it, or, maybe completely paid off and people just don't want to deal with regular real estate agents, or is it you just kind of pick a strategy and run with it, or are there certain strategies that tend to work better?
Well, if you're looking for seller financing specifically, it's hard to sort by, like, there isn't like a box every homeowner checks somewhere in public record that says, yes, I'd be willing to seller finance, so you can't really sort by that, but you can sort by certain parameters that tend to lead to those seller finance deals. So let's say someone's in pre-foreclosure. Well, they can't make their payments, right? So you can either offer them a price for their house in cash, or you can offer, hey, I'll buy the house from you for $0 down, but I'll pay all your arrears, but then the house is mine, but the existing loan is still in place. And a seller might choose that rather than go to foreclosure, because then they can't get another mortgage for 7 years and their credit is just bombed. So if you sort by parameters like that, you might find people that are willing to. Another common one to sort by is length of ownership. So let's say you find a property and it's linked to like 30 other properties and they've all been owned for 10 to 30 years. So this
linked. What does linked mean?
Well, if you find you can look at any property, and if the owner owns other properties, it'll show it on these websites. So you can kind of see this guy owns, or this entity owns like 30 properties. So you can see that if they aren't separating it really well with like those LLCs from Wyoming and stuff that are completely anonymous. So like, for example, I found a guy here in Boise, our Fargo 41 project, right? There was a house next door we wanted to bring into the project, and I found the owner's information and then his linked properties. He owns 30, because he uses Idaho LLCs that are not anonymous. It was able to link to his name 30 other properties, even though all 30 of them are owned in different LLCs. And one of those linked properties happened to be the house across the street from my primary residence. So, I talked to him about the Fargo project, and I was mentioning, once we got that deal done and signed off on, then I said, hey, turns out you own a house across the street from me. Can I get that too? Because it looks like it's a sore thumb in the neighborhood. It looks like garbage. Can I get it from you? But yeah, you kind of going back to the linked properties thing. If somebody's, been investing for 30 years, they own 30 properties and they're 65 years old, they're starting to think about retirement. And in a lot of cases, you can find that, they don't even have kids, so they don't have anybody to will it down to. So they also are savvy investors, obviously, because they own so many properties. They've kind of figured out how to do the cash out refi and buy more properties thing. So they realize that if they're savvy enough to realize that if they go and sell 4 properties this year and cash them out, they're going to owe a bunch in capital gains tax, 20%, right? Or with Joe Biden's new rules, 44% now. So rather than them, say they want to sell a few for their retirement, rather than just cash out, they may be willing to seller finance them to you, meaning that you'd pay them a small down payment and then they'd get paid over time, over say 5 to 10 years. So they can split up that gain over 5 to 10 years and offset it with things like, what's it called? Medical bills or whatever they've got, they can offset it.
Yeah.
Or they just pay less in a lower bracket because they spread that cash out over time. So instead of making $4 million in 1 year, they're making 250,000 per year for 10 years off those 4 properties.
And so, I
So
mean, that could push them down from like a, depending on where they live, could be like a 48% tax bracket down to like a 25% tax bracket.
right. Right. And usually those investors are savvy about that and they do not like paying taxes, right? They like to avert that. So yeah, there's certain things like that where you can sort by to find properties that are more likely, whether it's pain or savviness, right? I see most of them
on Zillow that you can search for keywords.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can just search for, like, if they've put in their listing, they will accept seller financing. So I found another one down in like Indiana that was going to offer seller financing, and you could go find it out. So I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. But I mean, not many people. That's probably not a high probability of getting a very unique financing deal done. It's just they're offering that as compensation for their higher price.
Yeah, and in my experience, I don't have any data on this, but in my experience, because I've done that, because I didn't, when I wasn't working for a wholesaler or have access to those softwares, I have searched for that. When interest rates shot up, a lot of listings on Zillow were starting to say seller financing available, and pretty much every single one that I called, was saying, "Oh yeah, well it's listed at 1.8 million, so." Go get and then I've said, well, a loan will only go up to appraised value of 1.4. And then what the seller says is, okay, go get a loan for 1.4. And then I'll be in second position for that 400,000. And we'll make it a 2-year, balloon payment. And it's like, well, that's ridiculous. I'd rather just pay 1.4 for it and not give you anything, because you're not who's your buyer, right?
So gain $400,000 in 2 years.
No, exactly. And so usually when something's listed and it says seller finance, it's if it were a good seller finance deal, it would be sold within 2 days, because everybody's calling on those and asking what the terms are. And if they were good terms, it would be sold. So if it's there for a long time and says seller financing available, it's usually 99% in the seller's favor and 1% for the buyer. And so why would you do a seller finance deal with 95% down? That doesn't make sense. Most loans won't even allow a second position.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to get any kind of like standard financing through a mortgage lender or bank or anything, because they won't let you do it. That's called a H or a CTL LTV, the combined loan to value ratio of your first and second. On most products cannot be above 105. So like FHA, you can do 105, but you can't do like 125, which is kind of what they're asking on that one. So you'd have to go get hard money for the first, and then you'll have a 2-year balloon payment on the second, which your interest rate on the first is going to be at least 1% higher than the going market rate, and then you have the seller financing, which is risky, because if you don't get something done in the first 2 years, then you're shot.
Right. And hard money lenders are savvy too, and they're not going to fund it 100%. So you're going to end up somewhere between 10 and 50% down on your hard money loan. So you'd be coming out of pocket like $500,000. They'd bring the other 500, and your cash on cash return is so minimal that it just doesn't make sense to do that deal. A lot of people think, oh, it's seller finance, so it's a good deal. And we saw one guy who was doing that.
So it's a good deal.
Yeah. This guy in town bought 3 properties all on seller finance, 10% down on all of them, and overpaid for them. They were worth probably 1.6 in total, and he paid like 3.2 for them. And he's been on blast, it's such a great deal. This is because it's seller finance, but now he's in a position where they're all due and there's no equity, there's negative equity, and he's just going to lose his investor's down payment. So, you got to really be careful with that stuff. For another example too, this young lady had reached out to me to talk about one that was on market. It was on market. Seller finance was offered, and it was on market for like 2 weeks, and she already put it in contract with the seller finance terms. And the terms were, he was asking $600,000 for this duplex. And it was worth about $450,000. and she had to put $80,000 down. She had to pay for her realtor fee, her buyer's agent fee. So all in all, she was like into it for like 105, and then she wanted to Airbnb both sides, so it was going to be like $160,000 of down payment essentially. And what I told her was, okay, great, you got 80 grand down, so now you're basically at 520 on your balance of your seller finance loan, and it's called due in 2 years at 7.5%. So essentially, you're going to get 13 grand of pay down. So you're basically going to be trying to refi 520 grand in 2 years on a property that might not increase in value by then, because it's worth 425 to 450 today, and in 2 years our interest rate is going to go down and drive our prices up again. If you're willing to bet 105 grand on it, go ahead, but I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
So my recommendation to her was, yeah, you need to get, instead of 12% down, you need to negotiate closer to 5, and the purchase price needs to come down 50 grand, and you need to extend it to 5 years at minimum. And this doesn't even include, she before furnishing it, she needed to renovate it, about 40 grand worth of drywall, paint, new countertops and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, seller finance, but not a good deal.
When I was thinking about all the seller finance stuff, it's like anything that's less than 10 years just feels way too risky. Just because, the overall trend of the real estate market is going up, and just the supply and demand, but there's pockets of here and there, and especially the neighborhood you're in, that kind of stuff. It can, be relatively stagnant for 2 to 5 years. And then there's other years where it goes up by 20%, but like you can't bet that in the next 2 years you're going to get 15%, 20% appreciation. No. It's just too risky. You could bet in 20 years you're going to get 10%. That's pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, for the seller, what a great deal. I mean, he's probably going to get a renovated, furnished duplex deeded back to him in 2 years. So, and got paid $105,000 to have his place renovated for 40. So she's learning it the hard way. But I hope not. I hope the market helps her out, obviously. But it's just one of those things that was not a good idea. But yeah, let's kind of go back to this house you're looking at. Did you reach the seller's agent?
I called and texted, and it's an agent that I actually know, and they did not get back to me. And it's been like a day, which is strange. Usually, if they got somebody who wants to buy their house, they're calling you back like within 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's been listed for a year, so I bet you he has had over 400 people reach out to him about what are the seller finance terms. So he's probably tired of talking about it, and he probably knows that the seller isn't being realistic and is just leaving it there in hopes that some crazy person just throws a cash offer.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing. And he knows, like, if it was that good a deal, I feel like he's got investors in his family who would have bought it.
Yeah, and without understanding what the needs of the seller are, I mean, it's tough to just put together an offer and submit it, because it takes 20 minutes to put it together, 30 minutes, and you don't even know what is most important to them. So, and once you send him an offer, if it's not at all in line with what his goals are, then your chances at putting together a second offer are toast, because he's just going to think you're a joke. Mm-hmm. So, if they're not responsive at all and you try for like a week or two, then maybe you just go for it and fire in the hole. But like, without knowing their issues.
Yeah, I mean, another one in the same complex went on the market for $600,000 less, and so it's okay. This place is overpriced by at least $500,000, and it's probably not going to be $500,000 beneficial to me to get the seller financing. I mean, in my mind, I was like, okay, if we can find a way to make this place cash flow as a rental property for 5 years, then I'd take the risk and I'd go with it, and I'd probably risk a lot doing it, but it was in such a great location. I was willing to risk it. But if, it doesn't seem like it's really going to work out if the agent's not even getting back to me, just because, like you said, it's if someone
Yeah.
would have done it by now.
My guess, we looked it up, and the software that we use called PropWire, it pulls public information, and what it looks like is they got an original loan for $1 million to buy it in the past, and that's probably paid down to like 950 now, and then they got a HELOC or some kind of revolving credit, equity line of credit on the house for another $1 million. So they've got $2 million in loans on it that would need to be paid off, and they probably listed it at 2.8, so that somebody buys it for 2.6, and then after all the realtor fees and closing costs, they get to walk with like 250K to go, maybe buy a ranch house in Nevada for 250 and retire. That's kind of what my guess is from the circumstances. So this person just wants to walk with 250. So with that guess, I would guess that the best way to make them an offer would be, okay, 10 years, 250 down, and take over the payments, which were 12 grand. And then the only exit strategy then would be Airbnb, because I assume you can't rent it for 12, for 16 grand on a long-term rental to cash flow positive.
Yeah, I mean, we looked up rents in the area, and there was some places that were going for like 6 or 7 grand a month, but then like there was some other ones that were going for like 19 grand a month. And so it's just a really wide range, and it wasn't like, it wasn't a mansion property, so it probably wasn't going to be the 19 grand. It was probably closer to 6 or 7 grand a month. And I was kind of thinking we'd probably need to get like 15 to make it work.
Yeah. 10 to 15 years, zero interest, obviously, because you're going way over value.
Yeah.
And I'd even want to put in an optional extension period. So I would say, buyer can also extend the seller finance term an extra 5 years, and maybe make it at 7% for that extended period, so that it's a concession on the buyer's side. But it'd be nice to be able to build in an optional extension.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, the ones that you've done, you did subject to financing where you just take over the loan. How did you find those properties? Was it by going on PropStream or PropWire and looking that way, or just kind of like you happen to see it and went to go ask?
Yeah. The ones that I've found have been people who are in some form of pain. So when I was doing this actively, it was right when rates shot up. So the pain that I was seeing wasn't necessarily we're late on payments. The pain that I was seeing was, hey, we bought this house for $400,000 with a 2.5% interest rate, and that was a year ago. And now I want to move. Like, I can just use one as an example. That was the most common. This grandma and grandpa retired and bought a house in Eastern Idaho, in Twin Falls, to be close to their grandkids. And then the kid got a job in Texas. So the kid moved, and the kid was renting just in an apartment. So it wasn't a big deal, right? They just moved. But now grandma and grandpa want to move to Texas too. The house that they bought for 400 grand and put 40 grand into renovating of their own cash, of all their cash. They put it on the market, and it sat and it sat and it sat, and they got a couple offers at like 290 and 310. So they don't have, they were willing to lose some money to sell it, but they couldn't afford that much. So they're stuck in this house. So, so that's not really pain. They weren't late on their payment, but they wanted to change their life and couldn't. So that's the pain point. So what we did was we said, hey, we'll come in with.
Sorry, how did you find this place again?
This was just on a list that we had gotten. We had a team of like 12 people, so we didn't even filter the lists that much. We would just say, hey, this city, houses between 2 and 4 bedrooms, and it would be like a list of like 2,000 houses. Yeah. And between the 15 guys, we could call them all in like 3 days. Um, so yeah, that's how I found them. Um, but yeah, I mean, basically they had the loan on it and they had a HELOC, so they had two loans on it, and we just took over those payments and gave them $2,000 so that they could afford to move to rent a U-Haul and pay movers to load it. So that was it. That's all we gave them. So they just got out of it and they went and moved to Texas, got an apartment for a 2-year lease, and at the end of those 2 years, they can then get another VA loan, they had bought this one conventionally, so they could then go get a VA loan down there and be able to show that on their DTI that the house up in Idaho was covered by this subject to buyer. So
You only need 1 year.
1 year. Okay, so it was 1. Yeah, whatever it was. It was. I think they chose 2 years, but I think they were just waiting to save up money to have a down payment again. But yeah, so that's kind of how it works. And in terms of actually structuring it, it's the same kind of process as buying a house conventionally, where you go to title company and you sign the closing documents and you do all that. But and Rob, you probably know this, but listeners might not. Is one of the closing documents at the title company on closing day is a HUD statement. So it's the housing of urban whatever, the federal government.
The settlement statement. It just has like the balance for both the buyer and the seller.
Yes, and one of the pages in the HUD statement, you have to check a box on how it's being financed. So whether it's cash, 1031. There's actually 114, I think, choices.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And one of those choices is subject to, and that one's right next to seller finance. So you just check the box for subject to, and you do a deed of trust or a warranty deed, or there's different kind of deeds you can choose that move the deed into the buyer's name, but leave the current loan in place, and they don't notify that lender. So
interesting.
Yeah, and as long as you make the payment, even if the payment is coming from a source that isn't the name of the original owner, the original lendee or borrower, the lender doesn't care. They don't check that. So as long as it's just being paid, they're just depositing the check that arrives. They don't look at who it's from. The check just says the account number, the loan number in the memo section. So they just attribute it to that loan, and they don't look at who it came from.
I'm sure that you could also just get at it. Doesn't have to be a check you mail. You could just do the online payment thing, right?
You can, but that gets a little bit more complicated, because then the original borrower would need to give their login credentials to this person. And typically too, like when I buy a seller finance house, I'm not actually cutting the check myself and sending it to them. I'm paying what's called a third-party servicer. So just like mortgages have service companies that process all the payments and stuff for them, a seller finance deal, you pay $10 a month to the title company where you closed at usually, and they service that seller finance loan, because technically there's two,
to them, and then they cut the check,
and then they cut the check. And most of those third-party seller finance loan servicers are not super sophisticated, so they don't have everything digital. It is a lot of physical manual work.
All right, well, good lesson. Thanks for sharing. I hope I get a seller financing or subject to done, but it's probably not going to be this one.
Yeah, this one sounds a little unrealistic from the sellers being a little unrealistic, but I mean, keep reaching out since you know him, and see if he gets maybe he's in Mexico or something, and maybe he'll get back to you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so before we started podding today, we were podding by accident. we were talking about what did we start with? Sunscreen.
Yeah.
We were talking about sunscreen and then cancer, and cancer led to the carnivore diet, because the carnivore diet supposedly decreases your chances of cancer, right? Am I on the right path? And then,
Yeah. Yeah. It decreases your chance of sunburn too.
oh, okay,
I,
that's
I
what it
think
was.
that's where we led to it, how we got to it.
And then I mentioned how I was thinking about, is the carnivore diet really good for you because meat's good for you, or is it because salt is good for you, or is it because everything else is bad for you?
Hmm.
And your interpretation of that was yes, it's all correct. And then you started talking about how you're growing a little garden in your backyard and you have a little agricultural thing. So I'm going to start by ranting a little bit about what my interpretation of food and what we should and shouldn't be eating and what's going on in my life with food. I'm a big fan of holistic, uh, very short ingredient list food. I'm not quite like, I don't buy anything that's packaged, but I do read the label. And if there's something on there that I don't know what it is or I can't pronounce it, I won't buy it. There's also certain things I do know what they are and I won't buy it. Like really anything that's high in sugar, I try not to buy it. And if it doesn't say sugar, but it says it's supposed to be sweet and has like sucralose or something in it, like most sugar-free yogurts are going to have sucralose or any kind of other ose. I would rather have regular sugar than a artificially made sugar. And that's my interpretation for pretty much every ingredient. I don't need some factory recreating wheat for me. I don't need, a rehydrated or whatever. What's the word for what they do to bread?
I
I
don't
can't.
even know.
Okay, so like a lot of the bread that's out there is not actually bread anymore. They take the nutrients out of the bread, they make bread like stuff, and put the bread nutrients back into it. And it's just
Mhm.
what the heck is it? It's sponge stuff that's made in a factory. It's not food. Um, and so food to me is stuff that if you know where it came from, if it's very evident that it grew from a tree or a bush or the ground, then yeah, you can eat that. That doesn't mean that even all that's safe because there's a bunch of factory farming stuff that puts all these chemicals on your food. And sometimes those chemicals are just to make the food bigger. Like a regular ear of corn is not supposed to be a foot long. It's
Mhm.
probably supposed to be 6 or 7 inches long. And so when you get these enormous ones, it's because they've genetically modified these fruits and vegetables into, being bigger so they can sell more of them for higher dollar prices. And so that's why a lot of people like you are getting into growing things on your own because we just can't trust food companies anymore. People that make food. I mean, there's so many loopholes in what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And I have friends, even on the meat side, they won't eat meat because not because they think a vegetarian lifestyle is what they should do, but because of what's happening in farming practices with how they treat animals. And, they're stuffing them full of, artificial chemicals, not food. I remember when I was in college, we talked about how pig farms would just feed the pigs anything. And there was a Skittles factory near a pig farm. And if their Skittles came out miscolored, they would just give them to the pig farm and feed them to the pigs. So the pigs are eating Skittles. So if you eat the bacon from that pig farm, you're eating Skittles. Like you're eating
Yeah.
pork Skittles. And so, I mean, I'm jealous you have a yard to start doing this stuff because I'd love to explore it a little bit. I've tried to make my own bread as far as I've gotten. But a lot of people are going into building their own mini gardens and starting with like small things like tomatoes and berries. But tell me about what you have going on and how you've kind of started it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my girlfriend Elena, she's from Italy, where all the things that are legal here are illegal. So she just can't eat the stuff here because she was raised for the first 20 years of her life eating what is legal in Italy. And here we can't go to Applebee's and get a burger. Like she'll just puke it up. It's crazy. So that's kind of where I started learning a lot about this stuff.
It's an unfortunate but very good barometer for what is food and what's not food.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I met her, I started to learn that, oh my gosh, the processed food in America is so bad. And I went on the carnivore diet and lost a bunch of weight and felt the healthiest in my life. And, I was like, oh, just all vegetables are bad was my idea. Because they don't have teeth. So the only way to defend themselves is to be somewhat poisonous so that you don't eat it. that was kind of my belief system. And then, but then once she started growing stuff, I changed my mind on that, and I'm eating vegetables again. But not to shameless plug, but I kind of want to read this to you. This is our Strive Academy's nutrition promise. So we sort of summed up what is legal in Italy and then the things that are available here that we should not be eating. And it's short, but let me read this to you. Is Strive Academy only serves only whole and organic meats, veggies, fruits, dairies, and breads. Food ingredients such as seasoning, flour, oats, condiments, etc. are all organic and or whole foods with no unhealthy additives. Cooking oils are limited to avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and butter. That's cow butter. And when we shop for our foods, we prioritize simplicity and favor options with minimal ingredients. So ingredients we don't allow is any oils other than those, any food colorings or added flavorings, foods with added sugar or high fructose corn syrups or any unnatural sweeteners like the sucralose that you mentioned, produce that is not organic. So, the food, the oil, the bad oils, let's start with that. All that stuff that causes inflammation because it's, was originally designed to be machinery lubricant, right? Not food. Food colorings are proven in the 90s. It was studies were all released in the 90s and, furthermore in the 2010s and such, that food colorings directly cause behavioral changes, especially in kids. It causes irritability and tantrums and that sort of stuff. And so does added flavorings. And my rabbit hole opinion on that is that is all intentional, given that the food companies push that stuff, and the food companies are owned by the same companies the pharmaceutical companies who provide medicines for those ailments. So let's sugar these kids up with all this fake shit and food colorings that make them act crazy. And let's feed to them every day so they act crazy every day. And then we can blame it on their brain, not on the food. And then medicate them with medicine that costs money as well. So let's sell them the food that makes them need them to buy our medicine.
All ADHD pills.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of, the belief system that we have at home. And we hadn't really written it out until we needed to for our business. But yeah, we stopped buying vegetables at the store. We did through the winter because we didn't have enough saved up from last year, but we're going to be growing all our own vegetables this summer. We bought 6 raised beds, and that should be enough to produce enough food to last us through the winter. If we, can save it up, can it, and freeze it. We're going to buy a freezer this summer to be able to save onto that stuff for an extended period of time.
So I think one more thing to talk about with this is water. Because obviously it's a super vital thing to our bodies. And I know I get in arguments with my family a lot about this. I don't believe that fluoride belongs anywhere near.
I agree.
So
I agree.
I don't have toothpaste with fluoride. I typically will not drink out of the faucet. And so I don't know how else to really get better water than what I have, but I have I call it triple filtered, but I have a dual filtering system that's for the whole house. And then, so that's 2 filters. And then there's a filter that's in our fridge that's kind of like that came with it. So that's the 3rd filter. And that's the only water I drink. And it tastes different than other water. And even if out of the sink and out of the fridge, it tastes different.
Totally.
And so with fluoride, that's another thing that alters your brain. It also alters your teeth, can decay your teeth.
Making the frogs gay.
What?
Alex Jones is the biggest conspiracy theorist ever, and he was on Rogan saying the fluoride in the water turns the frogs gay.
That's great.
Did you see that though?
No,
yeah, if you put frogs in a vat of water that has fluoride in it, it's our tap water. If you have them live in our tap water for an extended period of time, all the male frogs start humping each other, and then they change sex to female. All of them.
You mean their genitalia actually changes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's bizarre. Okay.
Makes sense, right? All the people drinking tap water, changing their
Dang,
binary stuff.
tap water kids in high school these days.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to yell the frog's gay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's hilarious. I'm gonna have to look into that. Anyway, so yeah, fluoride is in it's everywhere, and people say it protects us from bacteria, which I do think is a good thing. But okay, it, certain bacteria we need to be sheltered from because that's the biggest threat to human society is being poisoned by bacteria. So we need to be protected from that to a certain extent. I think they've overdone it, and fluoride shouldn't be around. But like I would argue this is more important than what type of food you eat is how clean is the water you're drinking. And I don't mean is it clear. I mean, does it have the proper nutrients in it and not have unnecessary chemicals? So do you do anything to like prevent that from like with the water you use for your vegetables? Is that tap water?
When we're watering the vegetables, yeah, we're just using the regular tap water, honestly, because we don't really have the means right now to filter it. That would be awesome if we could filter the water in our whole house from right at the main, because then it would catch our irrigation too. But for that, I honestly don't know, but I bet the soil helps filter a lot of that, or the plant only takes the things from the water that it really needs. I would hope, but it would be good to understand that.
We don't. We use fluoride in our bodies.
Yeah. Well, you filter. I'm assuming that your water filtration system, the dual one, I assume that filters for fluoride, and if not, you probably have a carbon filter in your fridge, and you can look up if that one is the type of carbon filter that filters fluoride. If not, if neither of those do, we found that there are actually two types of Brita filters. One is just the standard one, and then there's Brita. I think it's called Premier or Brita, like the top of the line one or whatever. And it's like $2 more for a 12 pack than the regular one. So it's kind of a no brainer to just go with that one because that one filters fluoride. So that's what we give to the dogs. That's the one we put in our coffee, and that's the one we drank.
I remember hearing about mineralized water as well, because I mean the healthiest water is going to be like from rivers and streams, and so you're going to be absorbing the natural minerals that come from the rocks in those streams. So I mean, have you read anything about mineralized water or mineralization of water?
Not too much, but something we've started doing is we bought Celtic salt, which is one of the more pure ones, and we put that in like in this thing where I drink my water. Every time I fill it up with the Brita, I take a pinch of that salt and I drop it in there and I shake it up with the straw, and I also find that it quenches my thirst a lot better too, and especially after a good workout, I put a little extra salt in there, and it's like this is what Gatorade was meant to be,
Yeah.
because all that lactic acid in the muscles is satiated by that salt.
I know when I was doing some long term fast, I did a 36-hour fast, and what they recommended is drink a bunch of water, but like also put some salt in it because it's going to help your body absorb more water. And so that's kind of when we talked about this at the beginning, we said, is the salt from the meat the good thing for you? Because there's so many things about salt, how they used to store salt in these giant containers, and it was like the most important thing that they had to get. And it's like now salt is just like something we sometimes put on our food. Like why was
We
it
fear it.
yeah, why was it so important like 1,000 years ago? And now it's just, kind of sort of there. And so I think that salt is much more beneficial than it leads on to be. And I don't think having too much salt is a big thing. Also, you're thinking of cholesterol, the whole thing that you can eat too much cholesterol and it becomes cholesterol in your body is not true. You can eat salt and red meat and it does not affect your cholesterol. It's other lifestyle choices that you make that tend to be linked, like correlate with those, but it's not just eating red meat and salt.
Yeah. I mean, our bodies tell us what it wants, right? Like you've heard of pregnant women who crave dirt, right?
Dirt?
Yeah, they crave dirt because their body needs an elevated amount of iron at certain points in pregnancy. So, like when Rafi was in utero, his mom did not eat meat at the time, and she's like, I'm craving meat, and this is weird, but dirt. I'm like, well, I can either go grab you a scoop of dirt from the yard, or I can run to In-N-Out real quick and get you a few Flying Dutchmans. And she started eating an In-N-Out burger at lunch every day, which I don't recommend, but uh, she, she like didn't crave the dirt anymore after eating meat. So it's like a iron deficiency, and if you don't have, if the hunter in the group of hunter gatherers didn't get meat that day, well, how are you going to get your iron to supply your baby in your utero? You just eat some dirt. There's a ton of iron in there.
Dirt. I'm gonna try that. I think that this is also one of those things that society, we cannot eat the dirt that's outside anymore because it's so heavily fertilized and bug repelled and all this stuff that's in it. But I could see like having a mouthful of dirt that's in woods that have been untouched is probably not such a bad thing.
No, it's probably not. Yeah, I think people used to even rub it all over their skin to protect themselves from the sun. So our bodies would absorb it that way too. We're not like frogs that we absorb everything like crazy, but you absorb stuff in your skin, hence sunscreen causing cancer, skin cancer.
All right, one more thing on this for we're probably time to jump off. We rented a beach house this past weekend, and I've heard of stories that you might have even told me this. Jumping in the ocean can cure like illnesses. So if you have a cold and you go jump in the ocean, you're more likely to be healed the next day. And so like just out of sheer wanting to feel better from whatever was going on, I jumped in the ocean a few times. And I think it's the abrasion of the salt, and it's in the water and you absorb it. So it's another thing, kind of like craving dirt, craving salt, and encompassing yourself in it and putting it all over your body can be a huge benefit.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. But I believe it. I definitely believe it that being I mean, you've heard that just living near a body of water can make you healthier too.
I know it helps me mentally. Like, I don't know what it is. Like for me, when I see the ocean, like I see the creator of the planet, whoever it is. Like that is like I see the ocean. I see like the power of nature is what I see. Some people get that when they go to the mountains. Some people see that when they see rain or lightning or a tornado. For me, I go to the ocean and I see the ultimate power of what a wave can do to a rock edge. And I'm like, oh my God, how did we get here? So mentally, that makes me feel better. I don't know about whatever you're talking about physically, but mentally, it helps me enough.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think those are one and the same, because the mental, if you're mentally unhealthy, your body will follow suit. The brain is a powerful thing, and the nervous system.
I tell my wife that all the time. Is like she doesn't feel well. I was like, I want to feel better. It's like, okay, it starts right here. Tell yourself that you're gonna feel better. And then,
manifest that shit. Yeah, I saw a dude on the plane this week. He was yoked, but he was a skinny guy. But he was like, zero body fat, super fit, had a tank top on, and his shirt on the back of it said, "This is my." This is my medicine. And it was just like a bunch of images of like lifting weights, biking, running, rock climbing. And I was like, that makes perfect sense. A lot of people can get off of their mental health medicine simply by just working out daily.
Yeah, that's the thing with the younger generation is like when a guy gets his heart broken, all of a sudden his new love is the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, bro. Well, let's go eat some meat.
Yeah, I'm craving. What do you call it? A Flying Dutchman. I might go get one right now.
Yeah. I saw that Wendy's has a $10 50-piece nugget box, so I might do that before I start my diet again. Just kidding. Oh man.
I'll talk to you next week.
Good to see you.
Oh wait,
bye, Misty.